right, wonderful. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I'm so excited you decided to join me this evening. If you're a guest tonight, thank you so much for being here. We have a fantastic presentation planned for you with LifeWaves technology. And of course, I am joined by my very good friend, Dr. Don Verhulst, who is an MD that will be joining me tonight and the next 3 evenings. We are kicking off part one of our 4-part series for brain health, which is a fantastic topic to round up the end of our year, coming into the holidays, making sure our brain's in tip-top shape. And so we have prepared a presentation for you this evening and in the coming weeks to really hone in and focus on how LifeWaves technology can help your brain. We only have one brain, so it's super important that we keep it healthy as possible. You know, earlier this year, I did a 4-part series on heart health. And so I decided, I asked Dr. Don, hey, everyone loves you. My gosh, your last video a couple weeks ago, Dr. Don, we had over 10,000 views on that video. They just raved and raved about you. So of course, God dropped it right back into my heart to ask you back on again and to share more information, your expertise and knowledge with our field. So before we get started, if you are a guest or if you haven't heard or seen from Dr. Don Verhulst, give you a little bit of information about him. I've known him for 15 years and so been privileged to be able to work with him in the past and learn so much from him. But he is a graduate of the University of Michigan and Wayne State Medical School, where he graduated with his MD degree. Dr. Don has been the chief science officer for several wellness companies over the last 40 years, where he's formulated and consulted on many health projects. Dr. Don is the author of 5 books and has hosted a wellness TV program with his wife, Susan, for over 10 years on the TCT Global Network. He is also a licensed ordained minister who has taught on Bible health for the last 25 years. Dr. Don also writes and produces music and loves to share his music and bring joy to as many people as possible. And if you were at convention a few weeks ago, you got to hear him out in the lobby of the convention playing for us, or maybe in a private suite afterwards. We always love to be able to have you on, Dr. Don, and around in our lives. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you because I want you just to say some few welcome words before we dive into our PowerPoint here tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I appreciate that so much. And I hope I can live up to all those things that you said I did. I forgot some of those things, but that's why we're here tonight, to work on your brain. And I promise you, as you learn these things, what we're actually doing is exercising your brain. So your brain's going to get stronger and you're going to get healthier in your brain by just dealing with some of these concepts. That's part of brain physiology and how it works, and brain plasticity. We'll be talking about that, the ability of the brain to restore and renew itself. We used to think, when I went to medical school, which has been now 40 years ago, 42 years ago, I graduated from Wayne State University Medical School, and they taught us that you have all your brain cells and then 10,000 die a day, which is true. And it doesn't catch up to you until you're about 65. And that's when you get pre-senile dementia because you can't make new brain cells. We have found out that is not true. You are making new brain cells all the time, but more importantly, new connections. We're going to talk about that because that's how thinking works. That's what it's all about. And we've got such great information, and we've got the best brain support modality that I have ever seen. Natural or pharmaceutical. There really aren't many pharmaceuticals that are effective, and there's none that don't have side effects. So we believe in supporting your body's ability to function in the perfection it was created to function in. And we're going to show you how you can specifically increase blood flow to the brain, oxygenate those brain cells, build new ones, strengthen the connections that you already have. So you're on your way to a better memory, a stronger brain. And I'm so excited about this subject. I absolutely love this because I am a student. I've always been a student. I'm a teacher as well, but teachers are perpetual students, and I'm always learning, and it helps keep my brain young. My 88-year-old mother is always learning, and her brain is strong. Her memory is great. And she's using these modalities that we're going to talk about. So, Staci, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to all of the subject that we've chosen for these next few weeks. And so let's get started and talk about brain health.
Yes, let's do that. And before I do, I want to share our disclaimer. The information that Dr. Don and myself are going to be sharing this evening is for informational purposes only. If you have any questions regarding your health, please check with your healthcare practitioner. The information here is not intended to prevent or treat or cure or diagnose anything. Of course, if you're pregnant or nursing or on medications, check with your practitioner. So that information we're sharing tonight, take that away, take it to heart, pray on it, and just make your decisions on what you want to do to live your best life, especially when you're looking at your brain. So I'm going to share our screen here, Dr. Don, and I'm going to get started with our brain health. And I'm going to make sure we can get this out of the way so I can move all of this over, still being able to admit. So, Dr. Don, can you see my screen okay?
I can. It's perfect.
Fantastic. So, what are we going to start off talking about tonight?
Well, we're going to talk about a GHK copper peptide and brain health. First of all, what's a peptide? What's GHK copper peptide? A peptide is a protein, and it can be 2 amino acids up to thousands of amino acids. This is a tripeptide. That means it's a 3 amino acid protein, and it's hooked onto a copper molecule. And it turns out that this is a very well-researched subject. In fact, Dr. Laurent Picard started researching this when he discovered it and spent his whole life researching it from 1961. So this is not all new information, although there is some new information on what it can do, but it's well established in literature scientifically what GHK copper peptide does to the brain. It's a signaling molecule. What does that mean? That means it goes to the part of the body that it's signaling to and causes some positive effect. It's a part of health of that organ system, in this case, the brain. And, your brain is so important. Your brain is only a few pounds. So maybe, it's just a few percent of your body weight, but it consumes 25% of the oxygen that you have. That's how active your brain is. That's how important it is. And even if all the other tissues and organs are working right, when your brain's not working right, you certainly can't enjoy the life that you were designed to enjoy. So the brain is given special attention by the body. Special attention, the priority is always blood flow. In fact, that's why people faint. They faint so that blood flow can stay to the brain. That's why you should never pick someone up that faints. Lift their feet up and get that blood flowing to their brain. Let them get some blood flow. It's a defense mechanism to keep blood to the brain. It's a big priority because it uses a quarter, 25% of the oxygen. This little teeny organ, just a few pounds. So it's very important in your health. And of course, who doesn't want a strong brain and to retain brain function? And you can grow brain connections all of your life. Your brain can get stronger as you live longer. And GHK copper peptide is a signaling molecule that will help you do that. We've got some very specific things we're going to talk about, Dr. Staci, about GHK copper peptide and what it can do. So let's look at a couple of them. This is a long list, and we won't go through and read each one of these, but let's start with the first one, reducing inflammation. Let me say a quick word about inflammation, and then I'll see what your comment is on that, Dr. Staci. Inflammation simply means the body's reacting to bring priority to an area with increased blood flow. And when blood flow comes in, it brings oxygen in the red blood cells for nourishment. And then white cells come along there for fighting infection. Nutrients come in to restructure and to allow the cells to function. And then also when wastes are formed, it's very important in the inflammatory process to remove those wastes, which we call a localized detoxification. So inflammation is not a bad thing when it's acute. Like if you cut your skin, for example, your red blood flow increases. That's why it kind of looks red and angry. that's an inflammatory process, and the white cells come to fight infection, and nutrients come to the area to repair, and that's okay on an acute basis. But when it becomes chronic or long term, that's when it contributes to disease. And really, every disease is either promoted by or caused by inflammation. That includes even all the big killers: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, arthritis, anything, fill in the blank. It's either caused or made worse by chronic inflammation. So how does this relate to the brain? Well, your brain, you want to be protected from free radical damage, which causes aging and makes your neurons not work as well, so you won't think as clearly. And so this benefit, I love that we've chosen this one first, and for a reason. Inflammation is going to age your brain, and it's not going to function as well. So here's a signaling molecule, GHK copper peptide, just a 3 amino acid protein that signals your brain to reduce the inflammatory process. So that's a very powerful concept there, Dr. Staci, and I'm glad it's happening in my brain.
Me too. And you did highlight on a couple really important things when you look at, neurons and these pathways in the brain, and looking at the blood vessels. You mentioned the blood flow and the circulation. So like you said, we're not going to read all of these. You guys can take a picture of this, but these are some of the benefits of GHK, and they seem to be pretty darn important. Something I want you to touch on, Dr. Dawn, that I always find very, very important is over here where it says that brain relies on antioxidants. Blood-brain barrier blocks most of them, but GHK can actually cross the blood-brain barrier, which allows it to provide unique benefits to the brain. Can you talk a little bit more on that? Because you know that the blood and the cerebrospinal fluid don't mix. So why is this important to people?
Yes, well, that's something that I don't think most people, unless you're a brain physiologist or you know quite a bit about anatomy, you really know what the blood-brain barrier is for. And it's a barrier so that bad things can't get in. And it protects the brain because the brain is such an important organ. But in the process of that occurring and doing its function, it's also difficult for nutrients to get in too. So there's a balance there that you try to strike. You want antioxidants in your brain. Those are the ones that are going to protect against free radical damage. And free radicals are just little molecules that go around tearing up tissues, in this case, brain cells, tearing it up like that Tasmanian devil. Remember that cartoon character went around whirling and doing? That's what a free radical is like. And built into your body, or you get them in your diet actually, and your body makes some of them, are antioxidants. They quench these free radicals and they protect against that damage that causes aging. The problem in the brain is the blood-brain barrier keeps some of those antioxidants from getting in. And the general antioxidants are the ACEs, vitamin A, C, E, the trace mineral selenium. But if they can't pass the blood-brain barrier real effectively, you still want that protection. So that's one of the huge benefits of GHK copper peptide, because it does pass the blood-brain barrier. So aren't you glad that you have that signaling molecule? And don't you want to activate that signaling molecule so it can go right through into the brain and protect your brain against aging, which really, bottom line, gives you an improved memory, which is the second thing on our list here. Mm-hmm. And when you, every thought you have, Dr. Staci, I love to teach this concept because you have literally billions, trillions of brain cells. You got about 100 trillion cells in your body. And the way that they talk to each other is they have axons, that goes away from the cell to communicate to the next nerve cell. And then dendrites are the one incoming, comes into that cell, and cells connect with other cells, and they may connect with hundreds of other cells. And that pattern of connection is what a thought is. Every thought builds a tree in your brain, so to speak. And the more often you build that brain thought, that pattern, specific pattern, the repetition helps a process we call cabling, and that's how your brain functions. The more you cable something, like if I hum this da 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 da, we all know and we think twinkle twinkle little star because we've cabled that since we were young, and so that's a very strong memory, and that's how the brain works, by these patterns and improving memory. So how do we get that function to work right? We're going to be talking more about that. But particularly, we want to protect cells against free radical damage, because if they get damaged, they don't talk to other cells right. They don't cable right. That's part of what happens when you lose memory, particularly short-term memory, which we're going to be talking about too. I get so excited because I've been studying this, and I'm just so wanting to share this information that we're just loaded with to help you learn how to increase that signaling molecule to your brain, the GHK copper peptide, Dr. Staci.
I love it. I love it. So we have one more slide here on the benefits of GHK on the brain. And obviously, you saw some things there with nerve growth in the last slide, neuroprotection. We're going to get more into that in the coming weeks. But let's talk a little bit about these 408 genes.
Yes. It's rare that you have a modality of any kind, natural, pharmaceutical, nutritional. It is just very rare that you have any genetic effect. They're few and far between. This modality actually clinically proven to be effective at the genetic level. What does that mean? Well, genes are contain the information, the blueprint for every protein in your body, which is what makes us different. We've all got the same fats, we've all got the same carbohydrates, but our proteins, they're mostly the same. If we're family members, they're very similar. But what makes us different is our different proteins. Mm-hmm. So we, at the genetic level, it's coding that and telling us what to do with everything, all the functions in our body, including making new brain cells and brain cell function and so forth. And genes can either be positive or negative. Thankfully, most of them are positive. So when you stimulate that gene, you get a good result and it's healthy and strong. But some genes are not good, and you don't want to express those. You want to down-regulate those. That's what it's called. So you either want to upregulate the good ones and down-regulate the bad ones. Guess what the good news is? The good news is GHK copper peptide upregulates 408 genes, and those are good ones that will give you a healthier, stronger expression, a better brain, and downregulates 230 genes that are negative, that you do not want to be expressed, that may contribute to brain disease and dysfunction. So that is powerful information. That's the reason I love to keep my GHK copper signaling molecule on high in my brain, Dr. Staci.
Oh, me too. I feel the same way. So let's talk a little bit here about our technology, okay? So my little slide wants to go faster than I'm pushing it. Go back. And I don't get to move it. There we go. Forward just one time, technology.
I love this technology, Dr. Staci, because to simplify it, when I explain it to people, when I'm talking about these studies, because I've been through these studies, I like to say hot brain, cold brain. Well, which one do you want? You want a balanced brain. You want a little bit of hot when you're doing things and up and going, and you want a little bit of cold when you're resting and restoration. You want a balanced brain. And that's what these studies, we can map now. We can look at your brain and see how hot and cold it is and which way you need to balance. And we put the colors in so that, the blue are the colder side and the red is the hotter side. So with that, I'll let you explain what you want to tell about this technology.
Absolutely. So you guys have heard us talk about the patch before. If you're a guest tonight, this is a non-transdermal patch. So what we're talking about here is a technology that David Schmidt has invented that is a wearable light technology. It doesn't put anything in your body. It works with your body's own light. to be able to activate that peptide GHKCU copper peptide. And so focusing on brain health, we're going to talk about a study that was done with brain mapping. And we're actually going to look at the benefits of this patch, using this patch every day, 12 hours on. You put it on in the morning when you get up, and you take it off and you throw it away, and you put it on again the next day. Leave it on 12 hours, take it off, throw it away. And we're going to do this over time. So Dr. Don, we're going to talk about this study here with inside of Psych Tech labs, and be looking at what all they found with the participants from our study.
Yeah, that sounds good. And you know, the balancing part of this is so important. And I'm glad you brought up 12 hours on, 12 hours off. It's 12 hours of activation with this patch of the regenerating cells in your body, and then 12 hours of rest and restoration. That's important, because if we just stimulate it all the time, then a couple things would happen. We'd lose the effectiveness of it. You wouldn't get 100% benefit. When you take the time off, you give your brain time to balance, get ready again, and get a full benefit again. So it's balancing in that sense. And it's also balancing in brain activity when you're wearing the patch. So let's look a little more into that, and show me what you've got, Dr. Staci.
Absolutely. So we're going to look at the effects of LifeWave X39 patches with brain mapping. Okay. And so we are going to talk in layman's terms, but just so you know, this research study was done by Dr. Chevalier. And so he has done a lot of studies for LifeWave, and as well with Dr. Clark. So these are the people that did the study. Dr. Don and I did not do this. David Schmidt did not do this. So we want you to know that. So here's what the study is going to measure. Dr. Don?
Yes, what it does is measures the synchronization of the signals between the sides of the brain and between different parts of the brain. And what that gives us is an assessment of their functional interaction, which means how well are your brain's parts working together? How balanced is it? When you've got a balanced brain, you've got a good memory, your thinking is clear. That's what we mean by EEG coherence, how balanced things are functioning from one brain part to the other. For example, just to keep it simple, if you have too much communication between the two sides of the brain in the corpus callosum, that's a seizure. And you don't want that, but you do want some communication so you can multitask and switch from different subjects. So we want a balanced coherence, and this EEG will let us literally look into the brain and see the brain balance or lack thereof, and the change that happens when you wear the patch and you stimulate the signaling molecule, the GHK copper peptide. And that's what it does. It quantifies, it measures the degree of interaction between the brain parts and the shared information, and basically is giving you a picture of how balanced your brain is or how unbalanced it is.
Mm-hmm. And so we're looking for coherence, right? We're looking for coherence. So in layman's terms, again, that's just balance, right?
It is. And when you have imbalance one way or the other, too much coherence is a seizure, and not enough is just not brain function. It's not working. You need balance for the brain to function the way it was designed to. We can measure this, then we can patch, and we know we're increasing GHK copper peptide when we do that. That's clinically studied, and we're going to talk about how specifically that's done. But when you do that, you can then remeasure and see what happened to brain coherence. Did it get more balanced? That's the question. Okay. Hypercoherence is what we'd be talking about when we'd be talking about the brain sites are going too much crosstalk. That's a seizure type activity.
Okay, and so that's what we have here. These slides that are here on the brain study, Dr. John Harmon did these. He and I did a Zoom earlier this year, and so he's really good with his graphics. He's the one, you guys, that wrote How to Reverse Aging. So this is a more current version, easy to understand, from Dr. Lauren Picard's work. So if you've seen this before, if you've been with LifeWave for a while, you're like, I've seen those slides. Dr. Harmon.
Yeah, and then hypercoherence is red hot. So Red hot brain is too much activity tending towards seizure activity. So
Right.
it's red hot. That's why those hemispheres are made in red there. And hypercoherence is poor inner site interaction. It's an indication, the result of it really is diminished cognitive efficiency. That means you're just not thinking as well as you could.
Mm-hmm.
And then hypo, that's low coherence. That's when you're not getting enough communication between the parts of the brain. And of course, that is going to not allow you to think as clearly either. The goal is to get into balance.
Exactly. So
Called brain coherence. Both
yes.
sides of the brains are sometimes they're struggling for airtime. They're trying to decide which should be given priority and all of these things. It's very complicated, but it really comes down to the simple fact: is your brain balanced? Is there a balance in brain coherence? It's not hypercoherence, too much crosstalk, or hypocoherence, not enough communication. The goal is brain balance.
Exactly. And so the study looked at that exact degree of hyper and hypo. So we're not going to read through all of these, things that were measured here, but obviously we want to look at the results, right? So what happened?
Yes. Well, you start out on the left there on session one with what I'll call a red hot brain. That's hypercoherence. That's too much activity. You're not going to be thinking clearly, as clearly as you could be when your brain's too hot. There's too much activity. It needs to calm down. And then by session two of wearing the patch and stimulating this GHK copper peptide, then you see that red coming down and coming into balance. And then you see even more balance after, and in this case, it's after wearing the X39 patch for 3 weeks, the brain calms down dramatically. And there you are looking at it. You're looking at the actual clinical results of this, in this case, a 77-year-old female yoga instructor, and she had the patch on C7 in the back of her neck. And there it is. You can see the brain function, how it brought balance, and her brain remained calm after wearing that patch for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And so this next one, Dr. Don, look at this. Whoa! We have someone that is very, very out of balance here in their brain, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this is a 67-year-old female manual therapist. She's a craniosacral and massage person. There can be a lot of stress working there. You're working hard physically, you're working hard mentally, and she had pain in her bones, joints, muscles, and no surprise, and it's aggravated by exercise. So there was a lot going on here. And look at her brain in session one. This is a red hot brain, way too much hyper coherence between the brain centers and the hemispheres. But then by session two, things are calming down. You still got a great deal of red though, because she was really out of balance on the hyper side. And then by sessions three, which is after wearing the patch for 6 weeks, the session two is after 3 weeks, and the brain became even calmer after session three, which is 6 weeks of wearing this patch, of stimulating the brain with this signaling molecule, GHK copper peptide. Wow, what a natural miracle worker that your own body is making. We just learned how to enhance it. And that's the exciting part about this, Dr. Staci.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Don. What if someone were to keep patching past the 6 weeks? What would happen to their brain? Like if you could just, speculate, what would you say would happen based on what you've seen?
The brain would not go completely cold to hypocoherence. It doesn't do that. The GHK copper peptide will bring balance. So if your brain's too hot, too much communication, it'll bring it down a little bit to cool it off. If your brain's too cold, not enough communication, which happens as people get older for sure, a lot of the time. I'd say that's more like a pre-senile dementia type picture, brain aging, natural brain aging, which we want to resist. Then the GHK copper peptide will actually enhance the communication between the brain parts and the hemispheres, and bring it back into balance. So wearing the patch doesn't go one direction or the other. It brings balance. And the more I help people with natural alternatives, I've been doing that for 40 years as an MD, that word becomes more and more important. The word balance. And in physiology, we call it homeostasis. It is that very important and delicate balance between anabolism, building the parts up, and catabolism, breaking them down, which is going on your whole life at different rates in different organs. But that homeostasis, that's the balance we're seeking. And we visually see it here in your brain. We can look at your brain with a CEG and watch the effects of putting this patch on, of enhancing that signaling molecule and seeing the direct effects on the brain to bring brain balance for clearer, more focused thinking.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously here's another person. Whoa, look at this one.
Wow. What do we got going here? She said that she felt more energy and well-being, and she had great dreams and sleeps. She's at session 1 here. She's pretty cold. You got a little bit of warmth there. And then by session 2, her brain cooled off. And by session 3, now we're starting to see more evidence of brain balance here.
Mm-hmm.
And what this shows is she had very low activity at the second visit after wearing the patch for 3 weeks. But after 6 weeks, her brain became very active in a more balanced position. And so we've seen different ways where the brain's too hot, the brain's too cold. What we want is that place of homeostasis, that place of balance. And that's what we're literally looking at someone's brain right here. And this is what's happening in your brain when you enhance that signaling molecule that does all of these beautiful things. And that's what the patch is designed to do.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Dom, because, people, we all have one brain and we all want it to be its best tip-top shape, right? People repair at different phases. They repair and regenerate with this technology at different times. So obviously we've seen several different scans, and there are many on this study. You can go to startx39now.com and be able to find this study. But we're seeing differences. Not everyone is the same. Some are getting a little, like she got colder. Some get a little bit more hotter, and then they start to get more towards that coherence. So is that normal for different people to experience different time frames in their reaction and their responses?
It is.
Why is that?
And that is all about the rate of rejuvenation of the particular brain cells, the neurons themselves. And that is such an important concept, and something I think probably the biggest challenge with patching is educating people. It's not a challenge that can't be overcome. It can be easily overcome, but it's an education process, teaching them that we don't know how quickly or how long it might take. The patch is designed to be worn 1 month for every decade of life. I'm 67, so I've lived 6 decades. I'm in my 7th, so I need to wear this patch 7 months before I even give an assessment on what it's doing. But most people will have results in 3 to 6 weeks. But everybody is different, like you've said. And you said we only have one brain. I might suggest to you physiologically, we have 2 brains. We've got a left side and a right side. And most people, left side is more analytical, and right side is more spatial and more musical, kinds of creative. And some people are more left brain, they're more analytical. Some people are more creative, right brain. And the balance between that comes into play too. And all of it requires balancing, not only from the individual brain cells with a GHK copper peptide, but between the hemispheres, the analytical part of your brain, the creative part of your brain. The good news is you can understand this, but you don't have to figure it out. You don't even really have to understand it. It's like to fly on a plane, you don't have to understand how it works, or put the pedal on a car and it goes. And most people don't understand how that works. But boy, I want to make sure to be able to take advantage of those things. It's the same way with this. We want good brain health. We want balance. And I'll tell you one thing, patches will not work. This X39 patch will not work if you don't wear it. You need to wear the patch, Dr. Staci.
And do we wear it every day, or do we do a couple times a week, or do you take
Well,
some time off? How
I'm
does that
so
work?
glad you asked me that, because would you like a strong brain once a week, twice a week, 5 times a week, or every day? I don't miss a day on my X39. Now, I am taking it off every day because I want 100% benefit. So 12 hours of activation and balance, and then 12 hours of rest and restoration.
I love that. I love that. So let's look here at our final thing with our slide, which is just the conclusion. So obviously this is all the participants, but what you can see here, I think would probably be the most important thing, would be the beginning of this second paragraph. These words right here, what would you say about this first sentence right here?
I'd say that sentence is just a very practical example of balance. There was a statistically significant increase in the physical reaction time at session 2 that I think is due to it says here, maybe due. I think it's very conclusive that it's due to the effect of the X39 patch on the physiology of the people. And then after 6 weeks, that effect is even stronger and more balanced. That's the conclusion, a stronger, balanced brain.
To a normal level, which is what we're looking for, right? We're
Right.
looking for that coherence down here. So that's really important.
A lot of science here, Dr. Staci, that backs up the very simple goal of thinking more clearly. It means you have better focus. It means you have better memory skills. It means you have a better sense of well-being, even affecting things like neurotransmitters, which determine how you feel, in certain brain areas in the hippocampus, the emotional centers. There's just so much here. If Dr. Harmon was here, he could wax eloquently about the details of this, but sufficient to say, it is definitely something you want to do, is increase the GHK copper signaling molecule to literally reverse aging on your brain. That's what it's doing. It's making your brain function more like it did when you were, well, for example, most people are older than grade school, high school, when you could memorize things and it just was so easy and you didn't forget anything. We can turn back the hands of time to a degree and preserve brain function and strengthen brain function. You could possibly, if you really got focused on this and did some other things like exercising, which increases blood flow to the brain for oxygenation, getting to bed on time. I know one of these sessions, I really have some powerful things I want to talk to you about: proper sleep and brain function, and then eating right for brain health. When you do all those things and you're putting on that X39, which we've seen scientifically, clinically evidenced of the brain balancing, you could actually have a stronger brain than you had when you were in your teens and in high school and in college. I know it's true because I'm experiencing that right now. And it took some of those, well, we'll talk more about it, but some of those best benefits I had from the X39 was from month 9 to 12. And I'm not 90 to 120. But I'll tell you, I've noticed that significantly, and I believe that that's what's doing it. And I'm just very happy and clear-minded and balanced in the brain. It's not just like a hyper thing where you're elevating brain function temporarily with caffeine or amphetamines. There's no chemicals involved in this, so there's no side effects. There's no interaction with anything that people might be using pharmaceutically, nutritionally, over the counter. So it is just really a blessing that we have this technology. I am very passionate about it, as you see, and I just want to encourage people, be with us the next few weeks, because if you like tonight, you're really going to like what we're going to share with you, because we've got some really state-of-the-art, cutting edge. We're loaded for bear for the rest of these sessions, aren't we, Dr. Staci?
We are. So we have some time, Dr. Don, if you're okay with answering some questions.
Sure.
Okay, now remember, you guys, we are not going to address any diseases, any syndromes. So keep that in mind. We're talking about brain health, neurological health. So we won't be addressing any of those diseases. Here's an easy question though. Someone wants to know, how do you know if you have enough copper peptide in your body? Now, we know that declines as we age. So how do you know if you have enough?
I love that question. It's a great question. And you don't know unless you have it measured and see, but I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you get some copper in your diet from nuts and seeds and dark green vegetables, or a square of dark chocolate every now and then. It's got some copper in it, but don't overdo on that. It's got a little too much of carbohydrates and maybe a little too much sugar there. But I think you don't need to go measure it. What you need to do is take a balanced multiple that's got copper in it, and then maybe have a square of dark chocolate a couple times a week, or eat some nuts and seeds a better way. Eat some walnuts. Walnuts are shaped like your brain, Dr. Staci. That's called doctrine of signatures. I believe that the brain was designed to look like the food that will nourish it the best. There's so many examples of this. Maybe we'll get into this as the weeks past here, but your brain looks like a walnut, and walnuts contain the essential fatty acids, omega-3s, that are perfect for brain health, and they've also got some copper in them too. So just make sure you're getting a copper source.
I agree. And people stress over that. And you need to remember too that, like Dr. Don mentioned earlier, peptides are chains of proteins, amino acids, right? The building blocks of your body. This is not elevating copper as in the mineral that's in your body. Totally different. You do want copper, right, in balance in your body. That's why we're going to eat that square of dark chocolate, because we don't want liver. But this is not the same thing. So very, very different, right?
It is. And in fact, you don't want to overdo. If someone just went and took a massive amount of copper, you'll throw your zinc levels off, because there's a balance between zinc and copper. So don't get worried about this. I just recommend balance multiple, because the most important nutrient for your health, whether it be brain health, heart health, kidney health, lung health, liver health, the most important nutrient for your health is the one that's missing. Well, which one is that? Well, we could do studies on you and spend thousands of dollars and do hair analysis and for trace minerals and all these other things and try to figure it out. Or you can take a good balanced multiple. It's got a little bit of copper in it, and eat real foods, God-made foods, not man-made foods, which are loaded with all the nutrients that you need. I do believe in supplementing, because the soils are not containing the nutrients like they used to. But that it's important to eat for brain health. And we'll be talking about this in weeks to come. So make sure you stay with us and catch all of these sessions.
Absolutely. We're going to cover different things each week. And just so I can remind you guys again, looking in the chat, I know you probably don't know how to reference things, and except for talking about your specific issue or disease or what's going on. So we cannot discuss anything to do with brain cancer or dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or ALS or any of those types of diseases. We're really talking about what types of things are going to support overall brain health. You're going to make your assumptions from there. But Dr. John, somebody asked, can X39 help with brain damage that took place at age 10 and now the person is age 47 and it's affecting their decision making? And I want to share this real quick. So for those of you that have heard my story or know my situation with my daughter, Taylor, she was a teenager at the time I started patching her, and she had a brain bleed when she was 4. So 15 years had gone by before I started patching her. So she had a 15-year-old brain bleed and trauma, injury, damage to the brain. And so all that time it went on, and yet using the X39 and a couple other patches we're going to talk about in the coming weeks provided dramatic results in ways that we had never seen in 15 years of everything holistic under the sun. So can it help from my personal experience with my daughter? It absolutely did. But what would you say to that when someone's had, because a lot of times people don't realize they have damage or a brain that's not functioning correctly until things kind of hit that.
Yes. I think it goes back to, and I love that testimony, and there's the answer right there, but I think it goes back to how this modality works. This technology is just phenomenal. And by the way, it's smart technology. It goes in the part of the body that's needed most. So you need brain help, it's going to go there. and take care of that. And then it'll go to wherever it needs to go next, which I love about it too. But it's this simple. And I think people need to understand this about the patch and how it works. It really works just the same as the sun. The sun hits your skin. That's light, a photo, hits the skin, the body bio, and it changes the body. Photobiomodulation, changing your body with light. It's wearable light therapy. The light hits your skin, the sun, and makes vitamin D. That is the process by which David Schmidt invented this technology, the inventor, with a 20-year global patent on it, which we're a few years into here. Just phenomenal. When you are born, literally a sperm meets an egg, and that's your first cell, and it divides into 2, 4, 6, 8. And all of those cells are rejuvenating cells. A rejuvenating cell just means a cell that can become any cell. And some of them become skin cells, and some of them become heart cells, and some of them become eye cells. But your body always retains a number of these primitive, we call them pluripotent rejuvenating cells that can restore and become whatever your body needs. That is an important concept. And that is what's happening here with this technology. Your body's taking one of those primitive cells that hasn't differentiated yet into a specific tissue, and whatever area you need the help in, it can become that. In this case, we're talking about brain cells. When you have a brain injury, and what a great example, your daughter, a 15-year brain injury, you've got inflammation, a lot of inflammation there, but you've got scarring. You've got damage, you've got dead cells there, senescent cells, and that means dead cells and all the chemicals that are laying around there making your brain toxic. You got a lot of cleanup to do. You got a rejuvenation to do. How do you do it? Well, you don't do it. Your body has to do it, and it has to do it with these regenerating cells. But the truth is, by age 35, you've lost half of these regenerating cells, the activity and number of those cells. And by age 65, you've lost 90%. So by this technology clinically proving that we can increase this GHK copper peptide, which is clinically studied and proven to increase these regenerating cells in your body, these pluripotent regenerating cells that can become any cell you need, in this case, a brain cell. Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. And you've got a great example there. Even a 15-year-old brain injury can rejuvenate, and it could be even decades longer than that. So what do? Get patching.
Get patching. So a lot of people in the chat, as I'm just scrolling down through, reading through them, they're asking about this exact thing, old injuries again, and with their children, whether, they're children now or they're adults now. And so I really want you guys, just from, again, my personal experience, I've done a lot of stem cell therapy with my daughter. I've done a lot of cranial sacral therapy, acupuncture, chiropractor, massage. We did all the homeopathic remedies, the supplements, the testing. I took her all over this country and out. And we spent, let's just say, upwards of $1 million easily out of pocket over that 15-year period of time. So we tried a lot of things, and a lot of things provided benefit. They did. We saw that we had a child that was happy and was really healthy and wasn't sick all the time. We detoxed the heck out of her after being in the hospital for that year. But putting the patch on my daughter was my main goal and purpose because of the brain injury she had suffered. That bleed was so severe that it left her unable to talk, walk, bathe herself, change herself, have any normal life at all. And so for me, it wasn't a question of, when I learned about it, it wasn't a question of, can it work? Will it work? It was, oh my gosh, this activates her body's own repair and regeneration system. All of these cells, it's going to help her body, like you said, Dr. Dawn, reduce inflammation. It's going to go to her brain, her body, where she needs it most to help for that repair and recovery process, even though it was old, right? It was an old injury. We had never stopped doing things, but we saw more results in even a short period of time, even with a matter of a few weeks, a few months. And I'm gonna share this now with you guys. For some reason, this is obviously coming up again. So I know this is not what we had planned, Dr. Dawn, but I don't know why, but this is coming up for you guys to see this. So this is my daughter, Taylor. This is Taylor before we started patching. Now, I want you to not only look at, obviously, this is her feeding tube. She's in her wheelchair. She's happy as can be, right? Happy, happy, happy kid. She was always happy. I want you to look at her hands. I want you to look at the curvature in her torso. I want you to look at her eye specifically that was closing structurally. Her brain bleed was up in here. She still had an Amaya reservoir in that in her brain, a shunt that was put in that was never used from a surgery that caused the brain bleed and everything else. This was her before we started patching. This was her in 6 months. Okay, so you could see changes in her body, and she obviously looked like she gained some weight, right? She picked up some weight. We saw changes in her level of happiness, of course. But look at her teeth, and you can really start to see changes in her teeth as her body started to shift. Her eyes started to open up a little bit more over here. Her hands started to relax. Legs started to straighten out as the torso was straightening out. This picture here is at 1 year. This is 1 year after patching. So this child is still the same child, but now we have a child that is so much more present in her body. So look at her eye.
Yes,
Structurally.
if I may comment on that,
Yeah.
to me, the most remarkable thing about these pictures is not only the eye opening up, but the balance. I can see coherence in this brain from the eyes. Mostly the eyes are the window to the body. That's what we're taught in medical school. You look in the eyes and you can literally look into the back of the eye and see the blood vessels for the vascular health. And we can diagnose practically diabetes by looking in that eye and seeing what's happening in the blood vessels. You're looking right at them. The eyes have it. It's the window to the body. And remarkable to me here is this progression. And I see not only the eye opening there on her right eye, but I see balance between the muscles, the eye muscles functioning, where she looks way more balanced after a year than halfway through, but way more balanced halfway through from before. Phenomenal pictures that highlight perfectly what we're talking about. And Dr. Staci, the good news is this: whether your brain is young or old, it still works the same old way. And the way that it works is by a cell talking to another cell, talking to another cell, and it's very complicated. It can end up being millions and billions of cells to make a pattern, cabling to cause a thought process. The good news is you can continue to make brain cells all of your life, but what you do and how you take care of this body determines in great portion how well your brain is rejuvenating, and more importantly for this discussion and what we're talking about, this modality, how balanced your brain is. So the really good news is there's something you can do about brain balance, about balancing the hemispheres, about balancing the chatter between brain parts, and bringing that balance so you get clearer, more focused thinking, a better memory, better mood, we're going to talk about that in the coming weeks, how emotions are really a chemical phenomena in your brain and how patching affects that. I really want people to tune in and not miss these, where we've got some really good information for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that explanation as well, too. That's interesting. I mean, I see that, I know that, but I didn't really see that in those pictures until you said that. And obviously the coherence was there. She could, carry on a conversation with you, where before she was not. And she was very much off in space a lot. And she was very focused after patching. So someone did ask if I used other patches, and I did. I used Eon and carnosine with her every day. A little bit of glutathione here and there. We know your glutathione's elevated by about 30% with X39. And like I said, I've spent 15 years detoxing the child. So we did use glutathione here and there at different times, but always X39, Eon, and carnosine. So Dr. Don, we have time for, I think, maybe 2 more questions. So, and thank you all of you for your kind words in the chat. I appreciate that. Why can't the patches be reused?
Well,
What's the reason?
because there's a very simple reason for this. There's only so much media in the patch, and the patch uses your body as the battery. That's all. There's no chemicals passing, but the infrared energy from your body, the heat energy, activates the matrix, the organic amino acids in the stereoisomer configuration, crystal and lattice structure, and it just gets spent after a while. There's only so much media there, and that's part of what happens. So it diminishes. But more importantly, the reason you want to take it off for 12 hours is so your body doesn't acclimate to it, doesn't get used to it. And then when you put that next patch on, you're right back to 100% benefit. Because if you just wore it all the time, it would give you a great increase in GHK copper signaling molecule, which I'm sure after you've listened to this session we've done, you want to have that happen. If you just kept a patch on all the time and even put a brand new patch on in 24 hours, it wouldn't do it the same way the next day. And then the third day it'd be even less and even less. So that's why it's designed to be worn 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And we see the results of it. You've seen it tonight. You've seen the actual EEGs. You've looked into people's brain literally and seen the activity, seen the red go towards the balance in the middle and when it's too hot, or the blue when it's too low go up towards the middle balance. So to have that balanced brain, that homeostasis that in your brain function, so you can think more clearly. And we'll be talking more about some of the other things that you need to have healthy brain function, including lifestyle things that you do. Is extremely important. I mean, it is important to patch, but patching will work even better when you stay hydrated. We're going to be talking about that in the future. Try to drink half of your body's weight in pounds and ounces of water. The brain is mostly water, but the solid portion of the brain is mostly fat, healthy fats. We need that too. So all of this is information to come, and I'm really excited to be with you, Dr. Staci, and to share these things.
Thank you, Dr. Don, for being here and being committed to our family of people of LifeWave that care about other people, care about their brains and their health. And obviously, there are lots of other benefits that'll happen from patching for your brain health. So I'm excited to dive deeper. We're going to dive deeper into some of the other patches for the brain, and we're going to dive deeper, like Dr. Don said, into some of the other habits, healthy habits and lifestyle and choices and nutrients and things that you can do to keep your brain healthy. So thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you for taking the time. If you didn't get your question answered, if it was pertaining to a specific disease, remember we can't address those. So please get back with the person that invited you, check with your healthcare practitioner, let them know that you're interested in using a non-transdermal patch, and plan on seeing us next week as we dive deeper into those other patches and other ways to be able to help and support your brain health. And then, of course, we are going to be diving into other aspects of the brain for all ages and how you'll be able to benefit. So make sure you join us for the next 3 weeks. Thank you, Dr. Don.
Appreciate you so much. See you next week. Looking forward to it.
All right. See you all then.